on this episode of ResiWeek, Smart Home Monopoly Legislation Edition, and RTI goes certified. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 281, Smart Home Monopoly.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Peerless AV, driving technology through innovation.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matty Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week I'm pleased to be joined by three of my close friends. First, we have Mr. Joe Whitaker. He is the CEO of Thoughtful Integrations. How you doing, Joseph?
Doing good. Glad to be back on the show. Talk about cool stuff.
Cool stuff to... Oh, dude, we have legal stuff. We have government affairs. It's going to be a blast. That's how we tee these shows off. Then we have Jim Koning. He is the National Sales Director for RTI, or Remote Technologies, Inc. How you doing, Jim?
Doing fantastic. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for being here. And last but certainly not least, my good friend, Mr. Jason Knott. He's the Chief Content Officer at CE Pro. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Oh, thank you for being here. All right, gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. Google and Amazon are in a smart home monopoly problem that's being attacked in Congress. The Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Antitrust has a hearing, and it's warning Amazon and Google of their growing monopoly in the smart home. Also invited to the party was Sonos's legal counsel. Read through the article from Jason. It's a fantastic article covering a lot of stuff that honestly really matters to us, not only as an industry, but just as stinking people. Canada hasn't done anything on this yet. Otherwise, I'd give you the Canadian side as well. But for now, we're going to stick with the U.S. side. Joe, let me start with you on this. There is a lot of conversation about this, and obviously Senator Klobuchar and Mike Lee out of Utah, both of them have made a pretty strong push on this. Do you see any legislation, that was awesome, legislative action coming out of this? Because we know that, Google and Amazon have locked this up. They make it very easy at times to work with, but they also lock things out. Do you see any sort of legislative action coming from this that is at all effective? Or is this another, Facebook is bad Senate hearing?
I would hope so. I would hope. There's been legislation for monopolies before. This has happened before. This is nothing new. It's just a new area of it. However, over what they're arguing with now, and the people who are arguing, no, I don't. They're totally barking up all the wrong trees. All it's going to take is one good lawyer to go, oh, your first thing is privacy concern with people, selling off your shopping rights and your favorite stuff and all that stuff. Dude, everybody already gave that. I've said this a billion times. You already gave that away on Facebook 10 damn years ago. They know where you live, what kind of car you drive, what you like to eat, they know how many kids you have, what kind of diapers they use. You already put it out there. They're not selling anything new. That privacy is already extinct unless you walk around your house and you say your social security number in front of a Google device or an Amazon device. It's already gone, poof. And then you got who's arguing, right? You got Sonos. Sonos is saying, oh, yeah, they're doing this and that. And, well, Sonos is just as guilty. Like we were talking about before the show, they're the only ones that can use Apple Music. I'm sure they understand what being a monopoly is like. So, let's just call it like it is. Are we going to see legislation? I highly doubt it, because their arguments are old. They're tired. We've already seen them. You could shoot holes through them all day long. But if they keyed on into the major things, which they have a little bit on, stifling creativity and new technologies and innovation, well, absolutely. undercutting the quality speaker guys by basically giving, now you've got arguments. I mean, way back in the day, for those that are old enough to remember it, we know Southwestern Bell, good old Ma Bell, did that a long time ago. That's how they got half of the nation's telephone service back in the telecom days. It's happened. Use those things, not these silly, why is Sonos even there? I don't get it. Other than the sales portion and stifling, innovation. No, I don't. I don't think there's going to be legislation. Not with the current arguments, but there should be.
All right. Jim, one of the things that, or one of the quotes that I really was pulled to was from Klobuchar, where she said, you should not have to choose which devices you want based on whether or not they play nicely with Google or Amazon's digital assistant, or whether Google or Amazon has locked them into an inclusive contract. Is this one of those things that really shows to the public, if the public's watching this, which, let's be honest, they're not, but they should be. So if they were watching this, is this something that shows just how difficult it can be to work with, Google or Amazon in these types of terms? I don't know to what extent RTI has gone down that road, but I'm sure you've at least had a conversation. Are they that hard to deal with? Are they that as ruthless as we think?
Yeah, it's hard to say. When you look at the entire control automation space, and you ask any manufacturer, what is your Achilles? And every one of them is going to say drivers. You never have enough drivers, right? There's too many products. We can't hire enough engineers, right? We don't have the B's and T's and the deep pockets like the rest of these guys do. So we're always struggling to keep up with what's going on. Their speed of releasing integrations and changes is really what makes this industry struggle overall, is just trying to keep up with the change. But the more they do this, the more the players in the space double down. We're the reason why a system can have a different front door camera from the cameras, from the thermostat in the home. The reason we exist is to say, let us be your interface into all things technology. So these companies exist in the control automation space to kind of bridge that gap. And in some ways I kind of look at this and say, well, I hope they don't figure out the legislation, because that's part of our secret sauce and why we continue to thrive and succeed. But I think the underlying core of this is, it's kind of like toll roads. Like, why did those exist, right? They're always going to exist. People aren't going to push back. And as long as we keep bridging it, we're covering up for some of these fallacies and monopoly. And there's a whole core of people out there that just want to hire the guy or gal and say, come take care of these problems for me. I just want to buy these products. I want them to work in my home, but I really don't want to mess with the technology side. So if anything, what they're doing is driving more customers, to custom installers to solve these problems. But, Joe, we know what it does for you and your company, right? From a complexity and challenge perspective. And again, that's where behind the scenes, while we adopt and engage and, we kind of want these customers coming in, it really makes the complexity of our systems go up. It reduces reliability overall, because sometimes these are Band-Aid solutions we have to put together. So at the end of the day, it would be really nice if there was a spirit of cooperation. They would engage, and we hope they do it voluntarily. We've seen APIs that are just not well thought out, not well integrated. The integrator gets blamed for it, right? And the control system gets blamed for something that the parent companies here that we're talking about really are the ones that control what information we can get from them. And the customers don't understand. So the education aspect of this, while like we were talking about earlier, this battle's kind of political. Customers and people really aren't paying close attention. It would be nice if there was a way to create more awareness around this problem, because ultimately the CI channel won't be able to change this. It's going to take consumers. When you look at the new Apple iOS update, right, how many people opted into the privacy challenges? If you put the power in the people's hands en masse, they can affect change. But us as an industry, all we can continue to do is try to take these different disparate systems and give the customer a complete system that they're looking for. It's tough.
To Jim and Joe's point, the interesting part about this is the smart home part of this antitrust conversation was only a sliver of what they're talking about. And so the potential, like Joe says, if they're having those just isolated arguments just on the smart home space, because if you saw, Google and Amazon were like, hey, we write drivers, we work with third-party companies, it's open, we're not doing any of this. But now, granted, I get part of it was probably some political grandstanding, which takes place in these hearings. If you watch the video, there was clearly some of that. But
really? Are you sure?
Hey, only in the U.S. does that happen, Matt. Never happens in Canada. Sorry. But it was interesting because they used some very specific examples of, for example, Klobuchar talked about the vertical integration of a smart refrigerator that would allow you only to purchase your food from Amazon Fresh or Whole Foods. And so I think, to Jim's point, if it gets to the consumer level, when you start getting into people's food choices, it's a lot more consumer. You're going to get a lot more consumer motivation than you are when you're talking about smart home isolation products. So it was also interesting to me, whether there's any real legislation that should come from this. I didn't know this when I was looking at this, that France banned free shipping. The country of France banned free shipping because Jeff Bezos recognized that shipping was the pain point for people that was preventing them from buying online, was the cost of shipping, which is why he created Amazon Prime, to eliminate the free shipping. France has eliminated free shipping, and in order to help their retail business, and supposedly it's working. So, is there some sort of isolated thing that can be done versus the breakup, like Standard Oil breakup that happened, with the Rockefellers back then? Who knows? But can there be some sort of other isolated pinpoint type of legislation that might work? Maybe.
Jason, do you think it's because I'm with you. I don't ever see, as much as they want to grandstand, no one's breaking up Facebook. No one's breaking up Google. No one's breaking up Amazon. They're too big. But do you see the pushback from really the privacy side, to Joe's point, of essentially forcing these companies to go the route of with that connected fridge, right? Rather than pre-selecting Whole Foods, forcing them to offer a variety of choices without debuting their own first. Because that's a huge issue with Amazon Basics in general, right? Is they find something that's selling very well, and then they create a version of it under the Basics brand and ship it out.
Yeah, I mean, the example that Sonos used in their testimony was Google Photos. Google came in and they basically killed every competitor with Google Photos, and then turned around and charged a fee based upon if you had a certain amount of storage compatibility. So they eliminated the competitors, and then they said, okay, and Sonos's argument was that's what they're going to do to the smart home space. They're going to kill off as many competitors as they can, and then they're going to start charging fees for access of your voice control to your RTI system or to your Sonos or whatever it might be. So, to your point, I don't know. It's a very complex issue, and I'm not sure where it's going to end up. But it's something that integrators need to be certainly aware of and be able to talk from the privacy standpoint. Mm-hmm. But I think, to your point on the privacy, until it gets to something like I said, food, or something that has a little more emotional reaction than your selection of your lighting control system, then it's not going to really motivate the consumers. So maybe they've got to get the super left-wing element of the Democratic Party behind this, and then something will happen. I don't know.
Matt, I wanted to add one really quick thing, because Jason said something that, it's just, to me, sometimes politics and legislation is mind-boggling to me. All it took was actually, you're going to want to snip what I'm going to say and send it to the Senate. So we could say, Mr. or Mrs. Senator, all you have to do is ask Google, why doesn't my Nest thermostat work with my insert here, RTI Restaurant Control Force Savant system? And then ask Amazon, and don't take this wrong, Ring, because I love you, but why doesn't my Ring doorbell work with any of these other automation systems? Because guess what? Each and every one of those senators, they have a Restaurant Control Force Savant or RTI system. They are firsthand knowledge of the brokenness of it, but none of them posed a question that affects their own household. mind-boggling.
Well, let me hold on though. Let me pull that thread for a minute. We're not going to get to anything, but let me pull that thread for a second. Is that not an inherent part of just our channel in general, though? As much as RTI or Control 4 or Crestron have worked really hard to bring in multiple things together, it's been people in the industry that make all these other devices work. Is there any major mainstream device in our industry that's designed to work with anything else? It took years for TVs to be able to actually turn up the volume on a receiver. Come on.
TVs took a while to get there, but smart thermostats came out. They were smart thermostats. We knew they were smart. They already had an app way before a TV did. So, I mean, that technology was already there. But it's not RTI's fault. It's not,
I'm not saying it is.
It's these broken, locked, impossible to use, non-released APIs that are owned by the Nest or by the Google or by the open your sandbox up, dude. Let us play too.
Hey, thanks for watching the first segment of this week's episode. To catch the entire show, please click the link below or visit avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.